Welcome, everyone, to a brand new episode of the Media Row podcast. I'm your host, as always, Justin Miller. Happy to have you guys here with us on this Friday. A lot to get to in today's show. First and foremost, then, I do apologize for the show getting put out a little later. Didn't get home until after midnight from Iowa City, and so just wanted to try to get it out as fast as possible. So we pre-recorded, all of our college football previews, our NFL picks that we'll get to, our deep dives with Drake and Iowa this weekend. But of course, I want to talk about this Iowa Drake women's basketball game. So wanted to get that out on the show. So that is why today it got put out a little later, but I appreciate you guys still supporting and still wanting to tune in and asking about the show. So it just means that you guys care, and it means the world to me that you do care. So busy day as per usual, as Fridays are. But before we get to any of that, just real quick, if you haven't yet, just make sure wherever you're getting this podcast to like, subscribe, comment, rate, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or viewing on YouTube. Do all that good stuff. We greatly appreciate it. And then, of course, follow us all over social media at Media Row Pod. You could see, our interviews, full interviews with coaches and players, because we post a few on the show. We'll have, Jan Jensen speak on today's show. We'll have Coach Pullman on today's show. But there's more that we gained in those post-game press conferences. So if you want to check out more of those videos, you can check them out on Twitter at Media Row Pod. And then last but not least, a huge thank you to our sponsor in Kelly's Little Nipper, 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Get over there, use that keyword in Woodley, and your first drink is on the house. So, busy day. Going to start on the basketball side of things, and then we'll get into our typical Football Friday breakdown and preview. We are going to start off with the game we were at last night as Drake falls to number 21, Iowa, 100-58 in a game where Iowa took control early and just never looked back. And first off, first time ever at Carver. So I want to talk about my experience there. I've lived in Iowa my whole life. In Des Moines, grew up like 2 minutes away from Adventureland, and never made it to Carver Hawkeye Arena. I think around in junior high or so, I want to say Aaron Crafts last year with Ohio State. My dad and I were planning on trying to get to Ohio State and see Ohio State play Iowa in Carver, but didn't get that one to work out. I think we actually ended up instead going to the Iowa State TCU game, and that was the game where Melvin Ejim scored at that time a Big 12 single game record, 48 points. So that was really cool. But I don't know why I remember that. I remember the weirdest things. As a kid, like if my dad asked me what I did after school, I couldn't tell him. But if you asked me, hey, who won the 2007 NCAA tournament? I'd be like, buckle in. It was Florida, back-to-back against Greg Oden and Ohio State. But no, it was a great experience. It was cool to see Carver Hawkeye. I've never been there. I love I was explaining to one of my buddies, the way that they have their jerseys retired, just the way it's set up reminds me of the Boston Garden. The way they're hung in the rafters just looks similar, and it's cool to see those Final Four banners from the women's team and Caitlin Clark's jersey, Frank Garza, Chris Street, all that stuff. It was really cool. It was a great experience, and everyone was great and welcoming in Iowa City. But to break down this game, you see the score and you see 100-58, and it was just a beatdown where, again, Iowa gained the momentum so early. Drake kind of put themselves in a hole with turnovers and foul troubles early, and the number 21 team in the country played like it. Just Jan Jensen's squad did what they do best, and what they do best is really just about everything. They're so balanced offensively. They're so dominant in the paint, and they're so big. Drake just, when you got into that foul trouble early, Maggie Taylor, their starting forward, she had 3 fouls in under 2 minutes. As soon as that happens, Jensen is going to take advantage of it. So it was a really difficult night for the Drake Bulldogs. We'll get to some of the positives that we did see, though, last night, even in a really tough loss for Drake. But before we dive too much further into it, here is Coach Allison Pullman after the game in Carver Hawkeye Arena discussing her opening thoughts following the 100-58 loss to the Hawkeyes.
It's exciting to be able to come play in front of a sold out crowd, great environment, something we absolutely positively would love to replicate in the Knapp Center in Des Moines. But this is a fantastic Iowa team that we went head to head with. But in all honesty, the very first quarter was a little bit telling. Dug ourselves a little bit of a hole, got a little bit of a foul trouble sort of scenario, and just needed to find kind of our grit and toughness in there. And I think there were some definite bright spots. But we are going to take this one home, and we are going to take a good hard look at ourselves, figure out a way to get better, and figure out how to refine Drake women's basketball.
So here's some numbers. And, Pullman talked about a few of those numbers. But the ones that stand out, first and foremost, the paint. The size differential of this team was brutal, for a lack of a better term. I mean, Stolke's so talented. Hayden really impressed me, and she got into foul trouble too, but still played great. Just all those bigs for Iowa, they're so fundamentally sound and so dominant, and it helps Iowa gain 62 points in the paint. They outscored the Bulldogs 62-24 in the paint. And watch those bigs play. Like, one of my favorite things about them is they rarely put the ball on the floor. Stolke, Hayden, whoever, they get the ball in the paint. They're not putting it on the ground. They're making a quick, confident move towards the basket, attacking the basket. They're not wasting any time. They're not allowing these smaller guards that do have great hands, and Grace Knutson, Abby Alsma, to try to steal it from them, utilize their speed against the bigs. They kept the ball strong in their hands. They make that quick first move, attack towards the basket. Fundamentally, just as someone who has always appreciated strong post play, it is beautiful to watch. I remember making jokes on, the old radio station where when Darnell Brody was going through kind of a lull where, just things weren't going right in his, want to say his first or second year at Drake. I made jokes about how, get Jan Jensen in. Ask her to coach up a little some of these bigs, because the way she coaches post players is, I think, the best in the country. Iowa has always had such fundamental bigs in the paint, and they're so good with their feet. They're good at passing. They're strong with the basketball. They make strong moves. They're quick with their decision making. So it just impressed me a lot. I think Hayden really impressed me for Iowa as well, because Stolke, you look at the points, she had 11 points, but she really didn't have to do much. And that leads us to our second number we're going to bring up on the box score, is the bench. The role players for Iowa just came in and were ready to take over for those starters. The bench points was incredible, and Pullman brought this up too in her post-game press conference, of Iowa outscoring Drake's bench 50-18, and just everyone across the board getting action for Iowa and making effective plays for the Hawkeyes. And then last but definitely not least, Iowa's ability to jump passing lanes, to swap balls away in the paint, to just have active hands overall, forcing 23 Drake turnovers and scoring 35 points off of those turnovers. This team is just so balanced all across the board. And Jensen, once again, has herself a really strong team, and it looks like Iowa's not slowing down whatsoever. Even 2 years after you lose Caitlin Clark and Lisa Bluter, this team is going to be geared and ready to go. And man, in a month or so, whenever Iowa State and Iowa play, you get some great post players. You have great guards, great coaches. That is going to be must-watch TV here in a couple of weeks. But just Iowa, quite simply, I think they just did what they do best. They're the number 21 team in the country for a reason. I think they get bumped up here next week if they continue to win. Probably within the top 16, in my opinion, because they're just so dominant. I don't know how you watch them and don't believe they should be a top 15 team in the country. But with that all being said, you see the score of 100-58. I think it just speaks to more of what Jan Jensen has. She has, again, another strong program, a balanced program, some really great athletes, both veterans and young athletes on this team, on this roster. So I think it's not indicative of where the Drake women's basketball team is at. This is going to be the biggest team, most athletic team Drake faces all regular season. And before I give more thoughts on that, I just wanted to talk. I asked Pullman, and I wanted to play this clip of just, in a tough loss like this, how these games throughout her time as a head coach, when she's played Iowa every year and played Iowa State, when you play such high competition this early on, how both short and long term, how do you see that improve your team? And here was Coach Pullman's answer.
Great question, Justin. So I think playing this level of competition, and really scheduling the way that we do in our non-conference, I think what it does is prepares us for a very gritty, very deep, very, very well-coached Missouri Valley Conference. And I think what's really special about that is, Coach Jensen, for a number of years, coached in this league and fully understands the fact that it is a very gritty, very tough, very deep league. So I think this is good for us. I think it's good for us to reflect, but I also think it's good for us to go back and now from every game forward, we get to cheer for the Hawkeyes in every game that they play, because we're always cheering for our state and making sure, obviously, we're wishing them nothing but success.
So, like I said, I don't think it's indicative of where Drake is at. This Drake team is still really good. There's still a lot of positives to take from this Drake team. And one is the backcourt for Drake has themselves some really good players. Grace Knutson, team high 19 points. Abby Alsma with 16 points. They just continue to lead the charge offensively for Drake. And they're so good at being able to create their own shots. And now they have 3 straight games for both of them of double digits in scoring. Abby Alsma, her confidence in the second half of last season, you could see it, but she didn't have to do as much when you have Katie Dennebeer, Courtney Becker, Anna Miller. But you saw the glimpses of, she can be really good here. This year she comes in and that confidence is to a new level. I mean, she airballed her first 3. Her first shot of the game was an airball. I think her second drive to the basket got stolen. She didn't care. She still goes out there. She shoots 7 of 13, 16 points, was great on defense, had the play of the game for Drake, where Hannah Stolke steals the ball, has a wide open lane. Abby Alsma drives and hustles back, blocks Hannah Stolke. Abby Alsma is 5'9", Hannah Stolke is 6'1". I mean, it's just that was the play of the game. And I think the backcourt for Drake, when everyone was so concerned of, man, who is going to take over the scoring load now that you lose Katie Dennebeer and all those other veterans, Abby Alsma looks like she's ready to wear that leader patch and be the captain of this offense, and Grace Knutson as well right behind her. So I think there were still some positives to take from this game. It's a tough loss. It's never pretty when you lose by 42 by any means, but still a great experience. Just as a fan of the sport, of Drake, of women's basketball, to see these two teams go at it. And the best part about this rivalry and what makes it so unique is the connections between the two schools. And if you watched on Big Ten, Lisa Bluter calling the game was awesome because, of course, she coached at Drake before coaching at Iowa. They were showing old photos of her and Jan Jensen, both Jensen as a player at Drake and then as a coach. Jensen has her name up in the rafters in the Knapp Center. But those are older stories, the historical stories between Drake and Iowa. There's new ground being broken here, as you have the two sisters and the McCabe sisters with Peyton McCabe and Taylor McCabe, who you had awesome shots of them guarding each other throughout the game, and it was just really special to see. And ask Coach Jensen about just how special it is each and every year when she gets to play Drake, whether that's in Des Moines or in Iowa City. And here's Iowa head coach Jensen discussing that.
Yeah, I think it's just bittersweet. It's just I think if you're blessed and have a good college experience, those years are so formative. And what Drake gave me, I owe so much to that place and the people. And Drake is really good people still to this day. And that's just, I'm for them every other game. So I don't really enjoy that. I looked in the crowd. I don't see as many now. I used to see, 15, 20 years ago when I first moved over here, you just knew the whole blue section. Now I don't see as many, but when I look there, there's still a few, right? So it's, it just is, it's a relief when it's over, but certainly when the ball goes up, it's just another opponent. But I think certainly like a game like today, you coach long enough, you're on both sides of a margin like that. And it just can go south on you sometimes. And, we got a little bit hot, but I think the world of, Drake and certainly Allison, and they are really hard to guard. And when those guys, they're pretty young with who's in those key positions. When you think about Katie Dennebeer last year, right? Like a Grace Knutson didn't get all those minutes, so they're learning and flowing. But Alzma and Knutson, they're going to be real good in time. I just respect them, but I'm glad the game's over.
So Drake falls in Iowa City 100-58. Road doesn't get any easier for these Bulldogs. They now have to return back home to play the 14th ranked Iowa State Cyclones, which Audie Crooks, Addie Brown, Bill Finley, they're on a tear as well. They are a very talented team. And looking forward to being there at 6:30 as next Thursday at the Knapp Center, Drake faces number 14 Iowa State. You guys should be there as well. So let's stick with basketball here before we jump over to the college football picks and previews that we usually do on the show on Fridays. We're going to stick with basketball with the men's side of things as the Drake Bulldog men host SIUE tonight at 6:30. We will be there as always, so make sure to follow along on Twitter for updates as well as the post-game interviews that we always put out there. But just wanted to do a quick little preview of this one. You have Drake, of course, coming back to the Knapp Center after a big win against Simpson, a team that they should have dominated. They did dominate, and they were physically imposing, all that stuff we talked about on Wednesday's show. So if you missed it, go check it out after listening to today's show. But SIUE will be a different test. They're a team that matches up a little better. They've already had experience this season playing a Valley team in Indiana State. They did lose that game. They lost 64-55, but already have that experience of playing a Missouri Valley team. They played Indiana State at home and lost. They're now having to travel, of course, to Des Moines. Drake with that bounce back performance, but Drake won against Simpson really because of their size. It was something we talked about all offseason of how big this Drake team is, how excited Drake fans should be with a team that has length and versatility, because we haven't seen it in a long, long time as Bulldog fans. This won't be as easy as it was on Monday against Simpson. Though they matched up so poorly. They really did. I mean, you saw people on Twitter making jokes about how Simpson looked like a junior high team up against, Federico, Exact, Isaiah Carr. They kind of did. Truth be told, they looked so small compared to Drake, and Drake just physically dominated them inside and out. It won't be that easy. Looking at the rosters, and after doing this for this game, I think that's going to be one of the first things I look at when previewing a Drake game is just how does the size of the rosters match up? Because so far through 3 games, that's been a big tell of Drake is if they're bigger than the other team, they are easily going to dominate. Now, first game against Northern Arizona played well against the paint, against the bigger guys. And then, of course, you had Robert Morris as well, who also played well in the paint against Drake. And Cougars, you look at their team, SIUE, 5 players over 6'8". And then you also have 2 that are 6'10 and 7'1". So again, it just won't be as easy as it was on Monday for Drake. Rebounding, the Cougars rebound very well. They've had 40-plus boards in every game. They only lost the rebounding battle in 1 game, and that was against Indiana State. And, I mean, it's indicative to their record, 2-1. They won the rebound in both of their wins, lost it in their lone loss to Indiana State. But they only lost by the 3 boards against Indiana State. So they're very, very strong on the rebounding side of things. That is something we've talked about Drake has kind of struggled in. Of course, against Simpson, we saw that was one of our many check marks we wanted to see going into that performance of just dominating the glass, and they did that against Simpson. But now when you have to really battle up against some bigger players, you have a 7'1" guy, you have a 6'10" guy that you're going to have to win the positioning battle on, that's going to be telling for the Drake Bulldogs because we've seen them struggle in those position battles. They of course get those boards where no one's around them, the boards they should get, but when it comes to those battles in the paint, it's kind of a coin toss. One thing that will help Drake though with SIUE is neither team is great at shooting threes. Both teams are slightly above 30%. Drake had their best shooting night from behind the arc against Simpson. They still didn't shoot it great by any means. Drake, though, they average about 24 three-pointers attempted a game. SIUE only attempts 18. And that is huge for Drake because that means Drake now going on offense, going on defense, they can really crash that paint, protect the paint. They don't have to worry about the arc as much. And then you flip it to the offensive side. I mean, I think this is a game where Drake just really needs to, their identity offensively is get to the paint, kick it out. Let's see some of those kickouts. Let's start knocking down those threes because if Drake can get hot from behind the arc, this game shouldn't be close with how much SIUE struggles from behind the arc. So should be a lot of fun. I'm excited to go cover it. I am in full, I love football. I'm all geared up about football still, but man, college basketball has always been my favorite sport. I love college basketball. Megan's out of town this weekend. I already got plans with buddies of all right, UConn, BYU, 6:00. What are we doing? Where are we going? So I watch every team. It's one of the few sports you can throw out there. Phoenix online versus a school I've never heard of, and I'll be locked in. So super excited to go cover a second straight night of college basketball, and then we get to cover some college football on the weekend, and that is where we will transition to Drake taking on Dayton in a huge Pioneer Football League matchup. I mean, this is probably the biggest game of the regular season for Drake. They have Morehead State next week. Morehead State, lower middle of the pack team in the PFL. Final home game for the Bulldogs. But trying to not overlook Dayton. Dayton, number 4 in the PFL. Drake, of course, despite losing their first conference game of the year against St. Thomas, they still stick in that number 1 spot. But just real quick, the numbers here in the standings of these two teams. First, you have Drake 6-3, 5-1, Dayton 6-3, 4-2. Dayton, number 3 offense versus Drake's number 4 scoring offense. You have number 3 Drake's defense versus Dayton's number 4 defense. You have Bulldogs, number 2 in yards allowed. Dayton a little further behind around that 5 and 6 mark in the PFL. But these two teams match up very well. This is going to be a lot like the St. Thomas game. I really believe that, where we previewed St. Thomas a week ago, and we said these two teams mirror each other. This is going to be a battle. This is going to be a line of scrimmage battle. The little things can really cause you to make or break this game. We saw Drake, a few little mistakes down the stretch, cost them the game at home. So this is going to be an intense battle. And Dayton isn't a stranger to knocking off top teams in the PFL. They did it 3 weeks ago, where they knocked off Presbyterian. Presbyterian was ranked in the top 25 in the FCS. They were in full control of the PFL. Everyone was trying to catch up to Presbyterian. They were already preseason ranked. Who's going to beat this team? And Dayton dominates them, crushes them 35-19. But since that game, Dayton has kind of been on a roller coaster. 2-2 in their last 4. 1-2 versus teams Drake has played already. But the struggles for Dayton, it comes down to third downs. That's probably the biggest thing that jumps off to me for Dayton is when you look at the box score, when you look at the team stats, their third down percentage is brutal. Dayton 1 of 12 in their loss against San Diego a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, and then 4 of 24 in their last 2 games. And if you're a Flyers fan, this Bulldog defense a week ago showed some weakness on third down, but for the most part, this season, they've been really consistent in forcing teams to punt away the ball. They've been really strong on third down. This team has been legit on all levels of the defensive front. You have the defensive line that's strong. You have a great linebacking core, which we'll talk about here in just a few minutes. And then that secondary continues to impress me despite how young they are. So third down is crucial for Dayton and for Drake because, like I said a week ago, Drake wins against St. Thomas if they don't allow St. Thomas to convert 5 or 6, it was around that mark of 3rd and 7 or longer conversions. I mean, it was a credit to St. Thomas because some of those plays Drake defended great, and it was just either a perfect throw or an athletic catch. But overall, if you're Coach Woodley, if you're Adam Cox, you're sitting there going, we cannot play so strong on first and second down and force teams to be in an obvious disadvantage at 3rd and long and allow them to get 10 plus yards. Just can't happen. You're not going to win many games. You're not going to be successful if you allow that to continually happen. Now, we didn't see that happen quite a bit throughout the regular season or throughout the early part of the season. We just saw it really against St. Thomas. Weather could have been a factor. Who knows? Regardless, if you're trying to take down a top 4 team and continue to stay in the driver's seats in the PFL, you cannot allow that to happen. And Drake knows that. I mean, that's not crazy analytics right there, but that is just something huge. And Drake kind of has the advantage with Dayton struggling so much on third down. And then if you flip-flop it, if you look at Dayton's defense, what they struggle with is really guarding the run. And what is Drake's bread and butter this season? It has been the run. Ever since you put in Nick Herman, the true freshman back there with the true freshman Logan Inagawa, the running game has been so smooth, so legit, and has been the key point to really Drake's success throughout this season. And you have a PFL 6th ranked Dayton defense, allowing 130.9 yards per game. Drake, of course, one of the best rushing teams in the PFL, and it really starts with that quarterback running back duo. They're so versatile. Nick Herman, if he gets out into space, he's so quick, and he just really has one gear. So those are the two biggest things when you're looking at the offense and defensive side. But one other thing that I want to bring up, and I talked about this a week ago previewing St. Thomas, where I said, man, you look at this linebacking core, and if you're a linebacker or if you are a defensive coach, or your kid is playing defense, this is the game to watch. This is the game to watch. Again, the linebacking core for both of these squads is fantastic. Drake, of course, with J.R. Flood and Sean Allison. J.R. Flood ranks 8th in total tackles. Sean Allison is 1st in total tackles. Then you look at Dayton, Vincent Ferenzi, he's 4th, and you have 7th in Sam Smizing. And this linebacking core for both teams are so good. You heard Coach Woodley talk about all the different players on that defensive side on Wednesday, but he really, really focused on the linebacking core for Dayton. So that is going to be something to watch, because now that puts a disadvantage for both offenses, where these quarterbacks are going to be challenged, because we know the Drake linebackers, just as well as Dayton's, can get onto multiple levels. They can blitz, they can they can guard the run great. They can also be great in pass coverage. They're all over the place. I felt like every time I looked up, J.R. Flood or Sean Allison is always in the tackle pile. They're always around where the ball is. They just see it so well. And so linebacking core is something to watch as well for both teams. And then just finish up with our preview of Drake and Dayton. Just some real quick keys. Again, nothing too crazy, I'm not going to say anything in these keys that are mind-blowing or something. I don't want it to make it sound like it's so easy. Why don't the coaches just do that? I don't want it to come off that way at all. This is just stuff I've seen from watching this team all season long, that if they do these 3 things efficiently, this team is so good and has been great on the road, has been great in PFL play, that if they do these things efficiently, it's really tough to beat Drake. And number one, it's the penalties. We talked about it constantly after the game. We talked about it with Woodley on Wednesday, and we're bringing it up again because it's so important, because Drake beat St. Thomas without those 3 penalties in the second half. And maybe the coaches won't say that, but as a fan, as someone who watches that game, I think it's true that Drake wins that game without those few penalties. And then secondly, quarterback protection. The offensive line had played so well, even against South Dakota and South Dakota State, but these last 2 games, Drake has really struggled in protecting Logan Inagawa, and against St. Thomas multiple times down the stretch. Just he couldn't get anything going because he had a player in his face the entire time. That final drive, they couldn't get anything downfield because he just had no time in the pocket, just had to get the ball out. So stronger quarterback protection is key. And then we just mentioned those linebackers. They're going to be keying in on that quarterback spy with Logan Inagawa's ability to run the ball. So you're just going to have to be prepared for all kinds of blitzes from all different angles and really try to give Logan Inagawa just a few seconds, because he can improvise. He's proven that time and time again. He can improvise. He's capable of handling the pressure, but you give him just a second or 2 and he can be really dangerous. And then lastly, this is something that Drake has done well all season long, even in their loss against St. Thomas, just really dominate the ground game. And when you have a guy like Nick Herman, Luke Woodson, Logan Inagawa as a dual threat, this team is very capable of really dominating the ground game. So game is at 11 a.m. It's not on ESPN Plus. It is going to be on YouTube. So make sure you tune in to YouTube, as well as just follow along on social media at Media Row Pod as well. So let's keep the college football discussion going. Moving on to the other local team with the Iowa Hawkeyes, the 21st ranked Iowa Hawkeyes taking on the 17th ranked USC Trojans in USC. This one, after the emotional loss to Oregon, now you're kind of just playing for pride if you're the Hawkeyes, while you have USC playing for college football playoff hopes. I know people say, oh, if things go our way, the Hawkeyes can still be a contender. I really just don't see Iowa. Like, they would need a lot of help. And it starts with beating USC, which, man, last week I said Oregon was the most athletic offense Iowa will face all year long. This USC offense might be the most balanced and strongest. I still believe that Oregon has some really athletic players. The multiple players that were out in Iowa City would have changed that score, in my true belief. USC just so strong on all facets of the game. And this Iowa defense is legit. They are very good. We know that time and time again, but this is going to be a true test. You have USC, who has played ranked teams already this season, hasn't fared well. They're 1-2. Their only win is against a Michigan squad back when Michigan was ranked, and it just hasn't. They haven't had great games against ranked teams. They should have beat Illinois. But the way the defense collapsed there towards the end, the way the defense just felt non-existent in that game against Illinois was concerning. But when I'm looking to pick between these two, I understand Iowa still, you can say they have a chance in the college football playoffs, but they feel like they're playing for pride at this point. I know that defense is really strong. I always trust Phil Parker, but this USC offense is really strong, really legit. They're at home, and they're playing for much more than Iowa is at this point. I truly believe that, and that is why I'm going to take the Trojans at home, taking down Iowa. And another ranked game we're going to get into, you have number 11 Oklahoma at number 4 Alabama. Oklahoma at the start of the year, I was starting to get actually really excited about, because I love their defense. Their defense is so strong. But we were starting to see that offense click early on with Matier, and you were getting excited. But ever since that hand injury, they have not looked the same. And they got smoked by a Texas team where you're sitting there going, man, you made Texas look really, really good, when during that time they were in shambles. And I still don't know if I trust Texas all the way. But they're 2-2 in their last 4. And while Oklahoma, I still truly believe that defense is strong, they are just not balanced. While you look on the other side, number 4 Alabama is playing like a championship contender. What a bounce back. What a way to completely change your season after a really embarrassing loss on the road to Florida State to start the year. They lost to Florida State, and people were already asking for DeBoer to lose his job. People were already saying, oh man, the downfall of Alabama. Everybody was talking about how bad Alabama is. Now they're 4th in the country and looking like they're going to rival Ohio State as a true championship contender. And they are just so balanced offensively. I've been really impressed with Bama, and that's why I'm taking Alabama. I think they cruise past Oklahoma, and not saying, the offense scores all 30 points. I feel like this defense for Alabama is going to get a few turnovers from Matier, from just the Oklahoma offense in general, and that is going to lead to Bama's cruising victory at home. No way Alabama loses this game in my mind. I truly believe that. So give me Alabama at home against Oklahoma. And then a really tough game to pick between for our third one. Number 9, Notre Dame at number 22, Pittsburgh. How do you judge these teams? You have both teams that you really look at their schedule, how they've played, and you go, these teams are good, but not great. At really anything offensively for both teams. You have Pittsburgh that is pretty good in rushing yards per game. You have Notre Dame who just feels like there's no strong point to their team, where I really thought at the start of the year he was going to be the best running back in the league. Man, their rushing numbers, they're like in the 20s. They're like 27th in total rushing yards. And so it's really tough to judge these teams. It's really going to come down to who wins that line of scrimmage battle, because both defenses have shown time and time again, from time to time, that they can compete with whoever. I still truly believe Notre Dame is a good team, with those 2 losses to Texas A&M, who's the number 3 team in the country, and then Miami, who is kind of falling short again from the college football playoff discussion, but still has an opportunity to make it, and at the time was looking like one of the best teams in the country, and Notre Dame only lost by 1 possession. So with that being said, for Notre Dame, this feels like a must-win game. I mean, for Pittsburgh too, you if you're wanting to make the college football playoff, you have to get through Notre Dame. But I just feel like there's too much on the shoulders of Notre Dame for them to lose this game. And I think they went on the road, and it's going to be a really tough one. It's going to be a line of scrimmage battle. Really tough to judge these two teams, just because you watch them, you look at the stats, you look at where they rank nationally, really all over, and they're just kind of good but not great. So I'm going to go with Notre Dame, though. I'm going to take the favorable team here and pick Notre Dame to win on the road against Pittsburgh. Finishing up with a huge SEC battle, as you have number 10 Texas at number 5 Georgia. Neither quarterback has been great this season. Starting with Arch Manning, because you know all lights and all media is going to be really focused on his performance, he concerns me with his consistency and his confidence in big games. Sure, he played great against Vandy. I will give him credit for that. That was the first game all year long that I watched where I saw glimpses of that arm talent, that confidence, that composure, and the skill level that we were all preached about and in the preseason. But outside of that game against Vandy and a flex against a poor UTEP player, he hasn't been there. He hasn't shown up for his team when they needed him, and against ranked opponents especially. Outside of the win against Vanderbilt, Arch Manning averages 168 yards and only 1 touchdown versus ranked opponents this season. That is not what we were told at the start of the year he was going to be. And then I look at Stockton, and I feel like people are still counting him out. Sure, he didn't play great against Alabama. The entire Georgia team didn't play great against Alabama. But he dominated against Tennessee. He played great against Ole Miss. But both of those defenses against those ranked opponents are not the level of Texas. Texas has a great defense, but I just don't know if it's enough to beat Georgia at home, because I believe, while I have confidence in Stockton's arm talent, Georgia wins this game if they control the running game. And I think that is something Georgia has done so well all year long, is really being so physical up front that they're going to control that line of scrimmage, and they're really going to control just the game itself, because I think they're going to control that clock and wind it down. And Georgia's defense is no joke either. I know they've kind of had a down year, which is weird to say when they're a top 5 team, but to Georgia's standards, they're not on the same level as previous Bulldog teams. I still think that home environment, that the physical nature of Kirby Smart's team is going to get to Arch Manning, and he's going to make a few mistakes that are going to cost the Longhorns the game. So I have Georgia winning this one. I think it's going to be a fun game. I think it is going to be close. I don't think either team blows the other one out, but I like Georgia at home taking down Texas, and that will do it for our college football previews. No Iowa State, of course. They're on a bye week. They come back to play Kansas next weekend. So that gave us more opportunities to break down some national games. But let's finish up with our NFL picks and previews like we do each and every Friday. Again, these are just kind of the top 4 games we're looking forward to watching on Sunday. And we don't go in real depth, with box scores and stats like we do at the college game. These are just kind of fun picks to wrap up the show. Starting with Tampa Bay at Buffalo. This is going to be a fun one. Both teams trying to bounce back after a loss. Tampa Bay is just so banged up right now, and I know the Bills are a confusing team to watch where they're losing games that you just scratch your head at. But looking at the rosters, looking at the situation, when you have arguably the best quarterback in the National Football League, like the Buffalo Bills do with Josh Allen, it's really hard to pick against them at home. And I think they're just more adept to bounce back quicker from a loss than Tampa Bay is right now. So give me the Bills at home. Sticking in the AFC, have Kansas City at Denver. This was actually a game me and a buddy who is a huge Bronco fan, we were talking about in like August, where, of course, with him being the fan, he's all ecstatic about this team, saying they're going to win just about every game. I was very similar with Seattle. And I was, of course, the skeptical one. But this was a game that I circled and I said, you know what? With how well the Broncos played in the second half of the season a year ago, I think they split with the Chiefs. And this was before we knew the Chiefs were just kind of a middle of the pack AFC team like they're playing right now. But I think Denver, who hasn't lost at home yet this season, continues to keep that going and beats the Chiefs in Denver. Then in the NFC, you have a huge game with Detroit and the Eagles. I know Philadelphia just came off that huge win at Lambeau Field against the Packers, a game where I actually picked the Packers to beat the Eagles, but still, Philadelphia didn't impress me. They really did not. That defense concerns me. I felt like Green Bay actually just lost that game more than Philadelphia won that game. I think there were some bad play calls down the stretch by the Packers. So I like Detroit in this one because I feel like Detroit this season, even though they've lost a few head scratchers as well, they play to their opponent's abilities, whether it hurts them or helps them. And, when they had to go on the road and play a Lamar Jackson-led, at the time, Ravens team, they performed to that team's level, and they beat the Ravens. Going on the road against Philadelphia, hostile environment, you're going to have to play your best. They're not going to underplay against, the reigning Super Bowl champs. I think Dan Campbell gets this team ready to go, and they bounce back with a big victory against Philadelphia. And then to wrap up, we have a huge game in the NFC West that no one's talking about. It's not going to be on national or, broadcasted as a primetime game, which blows me away because not only is this a game that could decide NFC West standings, it's a game that could decide just NFC playoff standings. You have Seattle at LA Rams. Huge game. I definitely will be locked in watching this one. And man, divisional games for Seattle the past few years, it feels like really outside of the Cardinals. So the 49ers and the Rams, Seattle just splits with them each and every year. And it used to be, Seattle wins at home. They're so good at home. It's flip-flopped all of a sudden where they're one of two teams left in the league that are unbeaten on the road. And so this was kind of the similar conversation I had with my Bronco friend, where I said, man, I think Seattle splits with the Rams. And I have a little more faith with the Seahawks on the road than I do with them at home, which it used to not be that way. And I think this is going to really prove to me where the Seahawks defense is, because I've preached about how good they are, how much I love this defense, but you're going up against one of the best offenses in the league and with an MVP caliber quarterback in Matthew Stafford. So give me the Seahawks on the road taking down the LA Rams to wrap up our NFL picks and previews. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in to this week's shows. Comment, like, subscribe, rate. You guys know what to do. Really appreciate all your support. Thank you to Kelly's Little Nipper, as always, for their support. And we will see you guys on Monday for a brand new episode of the Media Row Podcast.